At David Harrow's funeral, they whispered about carving up his empire. I stood in silence, dressed in black, hands folded, listening to men who thought the future already belonged to them. They spoke softly, respectfully, as if grief required good manners. But I heard every word. Divisions. Asset sales. Board votes. Territories. They thought David was barely in the ground, and already they were planning who would inherit his power. What none of them knew was that I already owned 51% of the company. They thought they'd fired me. Next Monday, they would learn who was actually in charge. The front pews were filled with the board of directors, seated like royalty at a private coronation. Their grief looked expensive, Botox smooth and carefully rehearsed. Richard Hale dabbed his eyes with a silk handkerchief that had never known real tears. Patricia Moore clutched her pearls while whispering to Janet Sullivan about quarterly forecasts. Bryce Dalton, our chief operating officer, didn't even remove his Bluetooth earpiece. He nodded occasionally, as if the priest's words were just background noise to his next deal. We were in St. Augustine Cathedral in Ravenwood, Illinois. Gothic arches stretched high above us, shadows crawling along stone walls and settling over the mahogany casket where David Harrow lay. He was the only one in that room who had ever truly seen me. The only one who understood what I was capable of. I stood 3 rows back in a simple black dress from a department store clearance rack. Invisible. As usual. Elena Parker, Director of Strategic Planning. The title David insisted on keeping, even when the board questioned why my department existed at all. They tolerated me because David did. They never respected me. Never invited me to their golf retreats or their wine tastings in the Hamptons. To them, I was furniture. Useful. Replaceable. The priest spoke about David's philanthropy, his dedication to community, his legacy. All true. But they didn't know the David who stayed until nearly midnight reviewing my proposals. The David who taught me how to read financial statements like crime scenes. Who showed me where corporate bodies were buried, and why silence was sometimes more powerful than confrontation. 3 weeks earlier, doctors told him the stroke had done too much damage. Days, not months. At 2:45 a.m., my phone rang. David asked me to come to the hospital. Elena, he whispered, half his face frozen, the other sharp with urgency. They're going to destroy everything we built. Hale's already talking to private equity. Dalton wants to strip the company for parts. His hand gripped mine with surprising strength. That was when he told me. 51% of his shares. Transferred into a private trust. My name on it. Papers drawn up months earlier, notarized, sealed, and hidden where the board would never look. We signed them right there, with 2 nurses as witnesses. David had planned everything. He knew his time was limited. He knew the vultures were circling. Let them think they've won, he said softly. Don't reveal anything yet. Watch them. Document everything. Overconfidence makes people careless. Now, standing in that cathedral, I felt the weight of that secret like armor beneath my skin. The documents were locked away in a safe deposit box. Copies secured by Emily Vargas, the best corporate litigation attorney in Chicago. David's public will left his shares to a charitable trust the board controlled. They had no idea a private codicil overrode all of it. Bryce Dalton turned around in his pew and caught my eye. He smirked. That same dismissive expression I'd seen in conference rooms for years. I heard him murmur to his assistant that the strategic planning department would be restructured next week. My department. My termination was already written. I kept my face neutral. Grieving. Appropriate. Inside, I was counting down. After the funeral, they celebrated. Ravenwood Country Club. Champagne. Photos. Smiles. Toasts to new beginnings. That night, Bryce posted a picture of himself sitting in David's old chair, feet on the desk. The caption read, "New era. New leadership." I watched from my apartment, the severance packet still unopened on my kitchen counter. I wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't take their money or their silence. 3 days later, at 9:15 a.m., the call came. "Elena, the board would like to see you in conference room A." Bryce's assistant didn't hide her satisfaction. Conference room A was where careers went to die. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. A long obsidian table. Today, only 5 seats were filled. The entire board. They wanted to enjoy this. "Elena, please sit," Richard Hale said, gesturing to the chair at the far end. The one reserved for the accused. Patricia Moore spoke first, her voice coated in sympathy. "With David's passing, we're entering a leaner phase. We've identified redundancies," Bryce added. "Strategic planning is one of them." Janet slid the packet toward me. "Your position is eliminated. Effective immediately. 2 weeks' pay. 30 days of COBRA. A non-disclosure agreement meant to erase me." I let my mouth fall open just enough. Shock. Confusion. Performance. David always said. "David isn't here anymore," Bryce cut in. I stood slowly. "Thank you for the opportunity. I learned so much from all of you." They didn't hear the warning in my words. Security escorted me out. I packed my office in silence. A fern. A mug David gave me that read, "World's most adequate strategist." His joke. His faith. That night, Emily Vargas texted. They took the bait. The war had officially begun. The safety deposit box felt heavier than it should have when I lifted it onto the polished table at First National Bank. Inside were the documents that would end their confidence. Share transfer certificates. Notarized signatures. Medical evaluations confirming David's mental capacity. And the final piece, a video recording of the signing, sealed on an encrypted drive. David never left loose ends. Neither did I. By Monday morning, the board was already unraveling. Panic always shows itself in small mistakes. Patricia Moore sent a company-wide email insisting no major asset sales were planned. Bryce Dalton, less subtle, held an emergency meeting and demanded everyone surrender their phones. That told me everything I needed to know. Fear had entered the room. At 9 a.m., Emily Vargas filed the ownership transfer with the Delaware Court of Chancery. At 9:07, the board's authority vanished. They just didn't know it yet. At 9:15, my phone buzzed non-stop. Missed calls. Texts. Emails. Reporters. Board members. Investors. I ignored them all. Power doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly. By 10 a.m., I was seated across from Victoria Hale at Caldwell Capital. She didn't waste time. 51%, she said calmly. Public record now. Caldwell controls 28. Together, we decide what happens next. Her offer was clean. Support my leadership. Stabilize the stock. Remove the board. 2 seats for her firm. Accountability for the rest. I countered once. She smiled once. We shook hands. At noon, the news broke. Corporate governance crisis at Harrow Industries. The stock dipped, then recovered. Employees flooded internal channels with questions. Fear turned into hope faster than anyone expected. By afternoon, the dominoes fell. Janet Sullivan resigned. Patricia Moore's attorney asked about cooperation. Richard Hale tried to submit forged documents challenging the transfer. Emily caught it within minutes. Metadata doesn't lie. Tuesday morning, the courtroom was quiet when the video played. David's voice, clear and steady. His intention undeniable. The judge didn't hesitate. Ownership transfer valid. Immediate injunction granted. FBI agents escorted Richard Hale out before he could protest. Cameras flashed. The empire cracked. Wednesday was the final act. The emergency shareholder meeting filled the boardroom beyond capacity. Investors. Employees. Media. Bryce Dalton sat stiffly, flanked by lawyers who already knew the outcome. I didn't ask permission. I took David's chair. For years, I began, this company was treated as an extraction site, not a legacy. Slide by slide, the truth surfaced. Offshore accounts. Inflated contracts. Attempted foreign asset sales. The AI division Bryce tried to sell for pennies. Gasps echoed. Phones lit up. This isn't revenge, I said calmly. It's correction. Victoria Hale called the vote. Removal of the entire board. Appointment of new leadership. Interim CEO. Chairman. The result was overwhelming. Security escorted Bryce out. He didn't look at me as he passed. Some men mistake noise for power. Silence had beaten him. That afternoon, I sent a company-wide message. Simple. Direct. Honest. The looting is over. The work begins now. 3 months later, the numbers spoke for themselves. Revenue up. Morale restored. Innovation revived. The AI division closed a licensing deal worth more in 1 year than Bryce ever imagined. Richard Hale was sentenced. Patricia Moore pled guilty. Janet Sullivan disappeared from public life. Bryce Dalton faded into cautionary tale territory. I stood in the boardroom one evening, alone, holding David's old coffee mug. World's most adequate strategist. I smiled. David had been right. The most dangerous person in any boardroom isn't the loudest voice. It's the one taking notes. Waiting. Choosing the moment. Power didn't change me. It revealed me. And this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. If you enjoyed Elena Parker's journey, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Would you have waited as long as she did, or would you have revealed the truth sooner? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who's ever been underestimated. I'll see you in the next story.